My name is Stacy LeBlanc, and I started as a prosecutor, have been doing this work, and really my heart right now is in prevention. And I am so excited to be able to bring some of what we're doing in the US. In some ways, the US has more acceptance of hitting kids than it does globally. We have more acceptance of corporal punishment, and we know it's a cause of a lot of abuse and harm for kids. So I've devoted most of my career at this point, after 39 years of just being a professional in addressing child abuse from a prosecutorial standpoint. I am currently serving as the president of the American Professional Society on the Abuse of Children, which is the largest society of professionals fighting child abuse, both in the US and international. I also serve on the National Review Board for the United States Catholic Bishops, and I teach at Tulane University on ACEs. But what I'm so excited to talk to you about today is what I frame or call painless parenting. I love the term polite parenting, and I'm trying to keep my time here. So I'm going to talk really quickly. But I have worked very closely with some colleagues, and one of my favorite colleagues, Dr. Stacy Patton, who has an entire website called Spare the Child, which really talks about where the origins of, that's this whole idea of of spoil the child actually is not in the Bible and is misused by many people in the US and internationally. But Dr. Patton and I wrote a book called Painless Parenting. We don't get any proceeds from the book, and it can be downloaded for free. And when I finished in a few minutes, I'll put the link in there so that you can see it. But I want to highlight that the manifesto, like that Brene Brown talks about, we have at the end of the book a pledge, a parenting pledge, something very simple where a parent can commit with their child that they're not going to use any more form of corporal punishment, and lots of activities that can be downloaded for free. And it also frames some of the research that we know about this. I always like to start with, this is my colleague, Dr. Patton. We spent an entire 8 hours on Zoom on Tuesday co-presenting our program, but we always want to make sure that people understand that in every way, no matter what it's called, hitting is hitting children. And so many parents, when I was a child, I grew up, my parents in my community called it spanking. A lot of the communities in Europe might say they whoop their children, but no matter what it is, and I know the work that you're doing, where it's often called caning, it is still hitting of children. We know that across the globe, it starts early, that 5% of mothers report starting to hit their children in infancy. And certainly that's not an effective way to ever raise an infant or any child. But we know that 70% of US parents hit their children by the time they reach 2 to 3 years of age. So it is across cultures. So let's look at from the research work that's being done internationally. In Australia, they did a study and they said there's three of things that have to be communicated. So I want to real quickly go through those three huge points. And it's absolutely essential that parents understand that hitting their children can cause long-term consequences, not better behavior, but psychological harm. Two, that it's ineffective. Hitting a crying baby will only make baby cry more. And three, we need to teach parents effective alternatives so that they can move from being ineffective to effective in their parenting and polite. So number one, what's the harm? Well, there's a ton of research. There's been over 1,500 studies, over 1,574 studies that show that hitting children, for whatever the reason, is not only never okay, it's harmful to them long term. So it causes a lot of harm. So as a professional in child abuse, we know it causes physical abuse, but it causes all of these harms. The other harm that we know is it harms the brain. The researchers at Harvard University looked at the brains of children like me, of young adults who had been spanked as a child by loving parents who never left a mark on them, and compared it to the brains of children who had never ever been hit. And they found that the brains of the kids who had never been hit had more gray matter, 14% more gray matter in areas that are important to their IQ. The 14% was in the left medial frontal cortex, 19% less gray matter for kids who had been spanked in their right medial frontal cortex, and 16% in the anterior. Great study to know, and I'm happy to share that with you on our site. We also know from lots of studies that it's affecting that child's IQ. A lot of parents hit their kids so they'll get better grades. They hit them in school, and yet we know that it's actually affecting their ability. Their cortisol is striking, and it's affecting it. So we've reduced this to a really simple presentation. When I finish, I will put this in there. You will be able to access it for free. You can print it in color or black and white and give it out to parents to explain the harms. We also want to make sure, if we're following the research, that we're explaining why it's ineffective, because we need to recognize that the research tells us that parents might think it works because the research tells us kids are not likely to immediately defy their parent. And so the parent thinks it worked. So when a child reaches for an outlet and a parent slaps their hand, that child might pull away. And for the first 10 minutes, the research actually tells us that child might not repeat that. The parent thinks it works. So I'm very sympathetic. My own parents, they thought it worked. They thought it was in their Bible. I've now showed them it's not in the Bible. And so we really need to have sympathy and not shame. So this is the research. If you wanted to know about it, if parents say, oh, it works, you can say, yeah, no, the research says it works for about 10 minutes, but that within about 10 minutes, kids repeat it because we haven't taught them. And that it's true. All children need discipline. And the word discipline means guidance. They need guidance. They
Mm,
need to know that outlet is harmful. So effective alternatives is incredibly important. A lot of times we talk about these in terms of positive parenting. Um, we have done a study where it's about to be published, where we read all 10 of the top parenting books across the globe. So all 10 of these books were reviewed, and we recognize that they give great advice on alternatives, but they don't address what we're addressing here today, the harms of corporal punishment. And that if we don't tell parents the harm of using corporal punishment as a last resort when they're most frustrated, they will use it. And so we need to make sure. So I'm going to give you these pointers. They're by developmental age. So what we would tell a parent of an infant is completely different than what we would tell a parent of a teenager. And so we make sure. Some great resources that are also for free is from playnicely.com. And they talk about what is recommended, what's good, but what we really should be referring to parents is what we call what's in the great category. So just easy, simple resources. We know parents need to know all the effect studies tell us that if parents understand development, they will resort back. The other part that is crucial, parents need social support. If all of their social support supports hitting kids, they're going to slide back. And so we have to find groups just like what you're doing with your, you know, pens up, canes down. That is providing a community of social support to say it is okay to never hit a kid.
mm,
And we know it is never okay to hit a kid, but we need to also develop communities. So I always like to, I usually do some scenarios, but because we had a little technology, I want to give everybody their time. But one of the things I find that when schools get frustrated with kids, like with penmanship, they don't know what to do. And even if you don't have access to parenting materials, just Googling it. So something simple as penmanship needs to be practiced over and over. Hitting a child's hand who can't write their letters won't help. And so when they're working with those pencils, just Googling it and realizing that their little hands that we learned with kindergarten teaching is that they need to squeeze so they can develop the muscles so they can get that fine motor grip. And there's so many things they can do that are really simple things. But something that you can do as leaders in your communities started with an idea from a doctor who was a child abuse pediatrician at Rainbow Babies. And she hung signs next to every no smoking sign. and recognizing that the Lung Association had developed in the 60s a campaign where it's still legal to smoke all over America, but they hung signs and said, in this place, this safe place, in hospitals, in schools, in restaurants, we ask you not to smoke. They hung signs right next to those saying that this is a no hit zone. And what we have found is just hanging a simple sign that says that this is a no hit zone actually has reduced the hitting of children. So we want to invite all of you to join us. You can hang a sign or you can just become a certified advocate. You can go to the website nohitzone.com that Lou and I work on, and we have global progress. So we would love to invite all of you to join us. And the one, as soon as you sign up on the website, I have a bunch of resources that I'm going to put in the chat right now. I have that I have to
Mm,
stop at 7:49, so I want to make sure, but I'm going to put these resources that you will be able to download. And I thank you for all the work that you're doing. um, and I would just like to say 1 second about this whole idea of spare the rod, spoil the child. In the US, most parents mistakenly believe that that line appears in the Bible, and it's not. And so, but
no.
a, a line that is in the Bible is about the rod and the staff comfort me. So if you need resources, we
Mhm,
have a bunch of resources as it relates to that. So, but thank you all for
mm.
the work you're doing. And I want to stop and give respect to everyone else.